For the sake of consistency, and we'll do monsters talking about them.
Well, welcome back to Monsters, talking about them. So it took a while for me to find something, but I finally found something, topic I first discovered in the foreword of the Inhumanoids book. I think it's called Real Encounters with Being of Another World or another something. It was called the Inhumanoids. And in the foreword, it mentioned something called L'Homme Rouge. It means the red man. Now, this red man he's an impish red-skinned figure that appeared over 260 years in French history. Apparently, he was first typically seen at night. In most of his, I guess.
Can you pronounce this guy's name again? I want to make sure I get it right.
L'Homme Rouge.
L'Homme Rouge. Okay.
Yeah, good enough. I think I pronounced it right.
I'm going to go with your pronunciation. You have foreign language skills beyond most mortal men. Go ahead.
So when this guy was witnessed, he usually was a bad omen. He brought loss and destruction. It was primarily seen in the Louvre and the let me think if I can get this right. It's the Tuileries Palace, the Louvre and the Tuileries Palaces in Paris. So apparently the Louvre used to be a palace. I did not know that. At least part of it. And apparently he was also this thing. The Red Man was referenced in books and official records and also in Napoleon's diaries. So in many historical texts, his first appearance is made in history here by Catherine de' Medici. And the de' Medicis were a powerful family from Florence, Italy in the, I guess that would be the high Renaissance, 1600s. Not sure exactly when the Renaissance ended, but that's neither here nor there.
Can I interject real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So it says the Louvre is former royal palace.
Yeah.
And what was the name of this monster again?
L'Homme Rouge. It's L'Homme and then Rouge.
I guess.
R-O.
Okay.
I guess I'm not sure what this.
Interesting.
Like what is it about this monster that makes him a monster? Like what's his size and description or anything like that?
It's like a small, impish, like red-skinned figure that appears at midnight.
Okay.
That's what I said that in the beginning.
Oh, I must have.
Whatever.
I blanked out.
Nah, it's just a guy that drinks all the time, and he's always red, and he's just yelling drunk.
Okay,
come on.
I don't think that.
Okay.
Sorry, but go ahead.
So Catherine de' Medici is at the Tuileries Palace. And she described the impish creature dressed entirely in red. Some people report it as like red skin, but sometimes they're just saying it's this impish little demon thing covered in or dressed in red. She apparently realized it was not an earthly being and thought it was a bad omen of things to come. So I guess in her history, after she had seen the red man, she would go on to instigate the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. In which the French Huguenot leaders were all assassinated, or most of them were, and the French Catholic mob violence occurred across the country against French Protestants. The Huguenots were Protestants, France, and this was a time of the Reformation and the 30 Years' War. So a lot of Catholic and Protestant violence was occurring during that time. So I guess the first appearance of the Red Man.
I'm trying to find this guy. Where? I can't find this stuff online. How did you find this?
It was mentioned in the foreword of that Humanoids book, and then I found a few. I tried searching for like Red Man, Napoleon, and stuff like that.
All I get is style documents and stuff like this.
I try Red Man Napoleon. I know he's referenced as L'Homme Rouge in one of these things that I found.
Napoleon's Red Man's a porn, so watch out.
There's his little Red Man of Destiny.
Yeah, it's his little Red Man.
Check out my little Red Man.
Napoleon and the Little Red Man of Destiny. Yes, does that sound right? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
the next, I guess the next sighting or next historical figure that I could find that was mentioned here was It was Louis XVI in 1792. Apparently, chambermaids discovered the bean in the king's bed when the king had fled the palace as the threat of the revolutionaries grew. So as he was fleeing, I believe it was Versailles, these chambermaids were, I don't know, going to find the king or whatever, and then they discovered this thing in his bed. And several months later, guards claimed to have seen the bean in the prison. I believe they're probably held at the Bastille, but should have looked that up. But guards will just presumably think that the Bastille saw this bean where Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette waited their execution. So for these two examples here, this kind of bean was a bad omen or a kind of a prophetic thing for French leaders throughout history up until this point. Now, the next part is where Napoleon comes in, and it becomes a little bit more interesting because he actually interacts with the creature. But to set it up, Napoleon first encountered the we'll just call him the Red Man instead of calling it the Bean, but first encountered the Red Man in 1798 during his campaign in Egypt. In his whole Egyptian campaign was supposed to, defend French trade interests there, weaken Britain access to India and stuff like that, in case people were curious, give a little background of why Napoleon was there. So this being was alleged to have appeared in Napoleon's bedchamber after the Battle of the Pyramids. The entity claims it had given advice to rulers of France over many years. It explained it came to warn him of a mistake in his plans. So apparently, throughout I believe this was taken from Napoleon's diary, but this just came out of the Humanoid. So I'm assuming that's how I know the conversation, or it's speculative. But here's what happened in the conversation. Now, you've become far too ambitious, the Red Man admonished. The French people are growing wary of your overwhelming lust for power. I have only ever done that which was in the best interest of France and not my own, sir, Napoleon must have replied. Maybe it's speculative, but either way. And how is it that you know of so many of my plans, or so much of my plans? The mysterious, oddly hued visitor merely smiled and shook his head. I've been at your side since you were a boy, he said, and I know you better than you know yourself. The enigmatic reply greatly puzzled Napoleon, who listened in amazement as the Red Man told him that his orders to the French fleet had not been obeyed and that his ambitious campaign in Egypt would fail. Furthermore, the entity claimed that Napoleon would return to France to find her surrounded by an allied Europe, and he would be confronted by angry mobs in the streets of Paris. The would-be dictator found this all hard to believe, but sure enough, the Egyptian campaign failed just as the Red Man had predicted it would.
Wow. Well, this seems to be no good. He seems to bring nothing but heartbreak to Napoleon.
Really, the kind of heartbreak kid of Napoleon.
He's like the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah, kind of. You're right. Kind of that. So I get that. Maybe that'd be something to look in again for the another monsters talking about them, the evolution of the actual devil sitting on your shoulder. And here, the police must be out looking for the Red Man right now.
Yeah, you hear that,
Mike?
Jesus,
he's coming for
you. You know what, Mike? I think it's about time you become a vigilante superhero.
I guess I could go out there and fight the crime with all.
Just shoot everyone on your street, so the police don't have any crime to worry about.
That's the way Hitler would have done it. Why not?
I guess so.
It's free crime.
Can I? Oh, so good that you got this. Can I interject with a little piece that I'm finding from Tashin?
Yes, please.
Is it about this topic? Because I might be covering it.
You're going to probably cover it. All right, let me wait because this is fascinating.
Yeah, I don't have. There's only I got less than 5 minutes left, if that. But okay, so after the the Egyptian campaign and that failed, Napoleon talked to this entity. He was next seen in 1809, and the being appeared again in Schönbrunn, which is in Austria. It was after the Battle of Wagram. Meeting with him this time, the being indicated he would have many more years of success ahead of him, as in Napoleon, but he should not conduct a campaign eastward. But some people know in history, Napoleon did have a disastrous campaign eastward in 1812 when Napoleon invaded Russia, suffered terrible defeat. A lot of his men starved, and he had to retreat back to Europe.
I didn't know how cold it fucking got up there.
Yeah. Turns out the Russian winters suck. So that was the second time that he had an interaction with the bee. Now, the final appearance was on the morning of January 1st in 1814. It was approximately 3 months before Napoleon was forced to his forced abdication as a result of the Treaty of Fontainebleau. This being was witnessed by the Counselor of State. So there was actually a second witness to this. It demanded to speak with Napoleon on the matters of great importance. So the counselor had been given strict orders that the emperor, being Napoleon, was not to be disturbed. But when informed of his arrival, the peculiar visitor was granted immediate entrance. The emperor allegedly begged the entity for more time to complete his plans, but the being explained that he was neither deity nor prophet, it had no power to change the course of things. I am but a messenger, he said to Napoleon. I am to inform you that you have 3 months to achieve a general peace, or it will be all over for you. In an ill-conceived effort to gain more time, the arrogant emperor launched a new Eastern campaign, but this left France vulnerable, and she soon fell into the hands of the enemies that were allied against her. On April 1st, exactly 3 months later, the Senate called for Napoleon's abdication. And then, I guess, to sum it all up, I mean, after Napoleon abdicated, he was exiled to Elba. He came back for his last hurrah, and he was finally defeated once more in a campaign to the east, relative east and northeast in Belgium at Waterloo in 1815. So, I mean, that would be all, folks, at least for the Red Man. I know it mentioned he appeared a few other times throughout history, but it didn't really give me, I couldn't find as much detail as I could on Napoleon.
Okay, so this is fascinating because this is, I don't know, this feels like something very different than what we've covered in the past as far as monsters go. A lot of the monsters we cover seem to connect. I want to speculate about this, but I want to interject a story, if I could, that involves Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, go for it.
So we know Stanley Kubrick is he did the what was the Eyes Wide Shut, you know, and 2001. If you listen to William Cooper's podcast, he does a whole coverage of 2001 and talks about how enlightened Stanley Kubrick was and how he tries to decode all of the messaging. So Stanley Kubrick is read in, and then there's also the conspiracy theories that he's connected to help faking the moon landing and things like this. So Stanley Kubrick is sort of read in if you want to buy into some of this stuff. This is from Taschen magazine. Which,
Passion magazine?
Taschen with a T. You remember this magazine? It was full of like super irreverent art and stuff like this.
Oh, yes.
Are you familiar with this one? I like this magazine, actually.
I'm just going to say I do so we can move on.
Okay, so...
Go ahead.
This is a quote from Taschen.com. It says, for 40 years, Kubrick fans and film buffs have wondered about the director's mysterious unmade film on Napoleon Bonaparte. Slated for production immediately following the release of 2001, A Space Odyssey, Kubrick's Napoleon was to be at once a character study and a sweeping epic, replete with grandiose battle scenes featuring thousands of extras. To write his original screenplay, Kubrick embarked on 2 years of intensive research, which he's known to do. Kubrick was very thorough, very comprehensive. And that's my interjection. Yeah. With the help of dozens of assistants and an Oxford Napoleon specialist, he amassed an unparalleled trove of research and reproduction material, including approximately 15,000 location scouting photographs and 17,000 slides of Napoleonic imagery. No stone was left unturned in Kubrick's nearly obsessive quest to uncover every piece of information history had to offer about Napoleon. And he goes on to include this... This is an article that I'm reading. So this is a backgrounder on Kubrick, kind of looking into Napoleon. And in the research, he finds this in 1815 edition of the Gentleman's Magazine. Mr. Urban, I have sent you the following strange account of Bonaparte's interview with his genius, they call him, as it has made its way into several public prints with a view of inviting your enlightened and unprejudiced readers to a candid discussion of the probability of supernatural beings making their appearances to individuals for the purpose of animating them in the performance of great exploits. For such, it must be allowed, Bonaparte has performed, if an infernal or celestial spirit ever did or make its appearance, it must be for a public end worthy of supernatural aid.
Huh. Interesting. I like that.
And so wouldn't that have been amazing if Kubrick had been able to make a movie about Napoleon where this little red character shows up?
It'd be kind of fucking awesome. He would have done it well. It'd be like The Shining with Napoleon or something. Some weird supernatural.
The Shining.
The Napoleon.
Napoleon's
Napoleon.
His red hammer. His red friend.
Yeah.
Napoleon's red friend.
He's called him the Red Man. I mean, L'Homme Rouge literally just means the Red Man.
So who is this? Is this maybe an alien? What is this thing?
A djinn.
A djinn? You know, it could be, although it appearing over like 260 years of history, believe me, unless aliens live a really long time, maybe it is. That's a good question. I mean,
what if aliens
so the red clothing could just be a spacesuit? We don't know what that that red thing was. It was just
true.
Red, yeah,
they wore big flowing gowns. Like, what if like early alien connections to Western civilization, like they were learning like how to interact with us without freaking us out, and so they would manage, because they apparently some people have encounters with alien. That's my first guess. My first guess is alien, but I don't know.
I think, Joe, right here, we're going to take a little break. The call quality is absolute shit.
God damn it.
It is.
What? Unplugged.
Clown Baby's fine. Clown Baby's fine, but Joe is breaking up again. You know those pauses?
Joe sounded fine when he was talking.
Not over here. All right, we just had some technical issues there with Skype, but we're going to close out this Monsters of the Week. Joe is running down the Stanley Kubrick film that he was going to do about Napoleon.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, man. And he found it, and the guy doesn't skimp on research. So I just find it fascinating that now I'm kind of curious who stopped this movie from being made.
Well, didn't death stop it because he did die?
Well, but this was after 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's what.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Ample time.
Well, if they didn't stop Eyes Wide Shut, why would they stop this? Look, Kubrick probably had a multitude of different kind of ideas and scripts floating around and ideas in his head that he was pitching. They probably were like, okay, you can do AI and there can become some cool graphics in there, or you can do a movie with Napoleon and his little red friend.
But I'll tell you, man, he's got 15,000 location scouting photographs, 17,000 slides of Napoleonic imagery. That's a lot of work to just be like, you know what? Fuck it.
It is. I mean, that is a lot of work to just up and abandon. And he probably planned to make that movie at some point in time. As an artist, like, how do you prioritize what you want to do next? It's very hard to do.
We table a lot of our. I mean, I'm sure you're in the same position,
dude.
I got this project, I got that project. I ain't fuck it.
Any listener of this podcast knows that I have so many movies in pre-production right now. I don't even know what to go to. Do I do Street Legal Dude? Do I do Hip Hop Cop?
Catcher?
The Semen Catcher?
Sky Laser?
What about the Boy Catcher?
Boy Hunter.
Boy
Hunter 2. Prequel.
Yeah. Then I have my rap bands with the Young Jizzer. And then all the Snowman projects.
Boys.
I'm opening up clubs. Who knows? We're doing too much
Very
stuff here.
difficult to keep all these pans in.
The Tino Panaccini movie, Club Hard.
It's all happening. But I do agree with you, Joe. I don't know what might be at play there for Kubrick, and because he has to get funding for this. He didn't put up his own money for these movies. He had to get producers involved and the studios to really back this stuff. And
who knows, because we know like Napoleon was there's like Rothschild connections and shit like this, right? Oh, yeah. So Rothschild, the reason why Rothschild became even richer than he was, based on whatever evidence you can see, is if I'm remembering right, is that the Rothschilds had messengers who moved faster than the rulers. And so the Rothschilds, who were more of investors, they were able to call the shots, or they were able to basically gamble on what the results of the war were going to be. And they knew before anyone else knew what happened when certain battles were being decided, and they were able to gamble. It's like these people with the Experian thing. Like, they're now being investigated. I know this is such a weird, random tangent, but there's these 3 guys who are being investigated now because they were major shareholders, sold off a bunch of stock right around the time of this major breach, and they didn't announce this breach for a long time, and now they're saying, "Oh, they didn't know about the breach." It's like, really?
Or the people who did the put options on airlines before 9/11.
Wow, it would be so strange if there was a network of people who knew what was happening before the information got to the people.
And I tell you what, anybody who doesn't believe that there were people in power who didn't know what was going on before 9/11, James Corbett did a really excellent rundown on this, and there's a book called Black 9/11. Check it out. It's about the financials and the transactions that happened right up until the first plane crashed into the World Trade Centers. Read it and tell me that you believe the same story that the media is telling you. Go ahead.
It's amazing how
sourced.
These coincidences always seem to happen around finance. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's like when people want to make money, they'll do anything, including killing people. It's weird, dude. I don't know.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
No. Silk Road, anyone?